like the
Right.
good old
I
days.
wish I had never brought it up but actually I'm kind of enjoying it. I mean, I'm kind of enjoying
Yeah.
my little stroll down memory lane when I did drink black coffee, and really, I taste the coffee again. To be real truthful.
Yeah, right. More coffee than creamer. So we are live on our video stream, which you can find us on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter. We're also, of course, right here on KFH if you're listening to us. However it is that you join the show, we appreciate you joining the show and look forward to your interaction with it on the IHOP hotline. What'd you think of Game 1 of the NBA Finals? 869-1240 is the number that you can let your voice be heard. We'll have some giveaways throughout the show here today. All kinds of good stuff happening. Latest on DeAndre Hopkins, perhaps a dark horse team in the mix. All kinds of good stuff, Paul. I'm ready for you. Ready for the weekend here?
Well, I'm ready. I'm ready for this show. I've been looking forward to it, partly because we're back in the swing of things with the NBA Finals, and this year's been fun with the NBA, and I've enjoyed the ride all the way through. Actually, all the way from the play-in games to where we are now. I've really enjoyed it. So yeah, I'm ready to go. This is going to be a good show. We're going to have a lot of fun, and of course, the thing that got my attention last night was the NBA Finals, and it was a fun game to watch in a sense of watching another team come in and dominate another team, and there was quite a bit of domination, and the solidification in my mind that Jokic is probably is probably the best player in the NBA. This guy does everything, and unfortunately, we don't get to watch him all that much because he plays in Denver. He's not in one of the sexy markets. But, I really enjoy watching this guy operate. Let me ask you this. What can he do? Jacob, what cannot this guy do?
I don't know, be a high-level defender maybe, but I don't even know if I agree with that. We'll talk about the finals. We'll talk about Nick Saban headed to Washington to lobby for NIL changes. Paul and I will have thoughts on that. Seeing Shohei Ohtani rumored for trades and those kinds of things. All kinds of fun and interesting stuff coming for you on this Friday edition of the program. But yes, Paul, it does start with the NBA Finals. It is it's not a totally lopsided finish. 11 points. I think the spread ended up, but right before the game at 9. So it was right around the number there. But it felt more dominant than that. The Nuggets let the Heat sort of crawl back into it late, but they were never really that into it. When I say crawl back into it, I just mean put it in cruise control in the fourth quarter. Nikola Jokic, offensively, just talking about scoring, it was sneaky that he ended up with 27. It was the 14 assists, I think, that really stood out. It was Aaron Gordon early, who I don't know that anybody would have circled Aaron Gordon as the offensive superstar, but and Murray and Jokic passed it up later in the game. But Murray was, Gordon was a big reason that, Denver was able to scream out to a start. And Miami, look, they looked gassed. You asked about altitude yesterday. They looked a little gassed. They looked like they were, out maneuvered a little bit in strategy. I don't know what to make of a big picture. I think that Miami in this series has always been a just one game at a time kind of team. That's sort of how they've been in the postseason. So I don't want to make too much out of one game, Paul, because we've seen Miami not look good lots of different times this season, but they look good enough to win these series. And so I think I'm still in observation mode. Not surprised Denver won game 1 by 11 points at all. Won't be surprised if they win game 2 by 11 points or 20 points or whatever it is. But what I can't you decide, and it's way too early in the series, is does this mean that Miami has no chance still? I'm not ready to make that declaration because we've seen Miami do this in individual games plenty. It's will they give us that glimpse of they're going to be able to find a way 4 different times to get it done. They have, they can't fall flat 3 more times, but there's still plenty of time, Paul, for them to do that. I'm not quite ready to write him off yet, but that's exactly what Denver wanted to do and see last night.
Well, I think that's an excellent take, and I agree with everything you were saying. There is absolutely no way that you look at this series and you think it's over. I don't think that's the case. I think this series probably restarts in Miami. I don't know that anything's going to change on the next game in Denver. I don't know that that's the case. But there's one thing that I think you and I will both agree on, and that is that you've got to get Jimmy Butler going in this game. Let me give you his line. Yeah, I've got it pulled up right in front of me. Jimmy Butler's line last night on the scorecard: 38 minutes played, 6 for 14 in field goals, 1 for 2, 3 points, no free throws, rebounds 7, assists 7, steals 1. This is a turnovers 1. He was a non-factor in essence. 13 total points in that game. Jimmy Butler's got to go. Jimmy Butler, this has become a team. You know, the moniker that Jimmy Butler has received, Playoff Jimmy. You probably heard that mentioned numerous times. I hear
Jimmy
it
Buckets,
almost every day. If you listen to any kind of sports talk at all, you're going to hear that quite often. So Playoff Jimmy did not show up to the playoffs last night in the finals. And there's a reason for that, because I think, one, his shot was off. I think a lot of the shooting was off for the Miami Heat. They only shot 40% from the field. I mean, it's not like they were lighting up anything. 33% from the three, and that was the difference in this game. But the big difference for me was the non-factor that playoff Jimmy Butler was, and that was the big thing for me. Denver did a great job, Jacob, of neutralizing Jimmy Butler. That was the story of the game to me.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's always going to be the story. Butler, Butler got to take more than 14 shots. Bam Adebayo, Bam Adebayo, he was just a tick under 50% from the field. But if anybody's taken 25 shots in this series, I want it to be Jimmy Butler, right? Like more than Jokic, more than Murray, more than anybody on Miami. Like, if there's going to be 25 shots from any one individual player, you want it to be from Jimmy Butler. And that's a credit to Denver. Look, Denver deserves credit for that. So again, that's what I mean with, like, it's pretty easy for me to look at that as one game and not look for some bigger, narrative developing in the series this early, is because, Paul, like, from what we've seen now, what do you think the chances are that Jimmy Butler's held to 13 points at any point the rest of this series? Tomorrow, I'd say they're pretty low.
I don't know. Maybe tomorrow.
And if he is, then Denver deserves all the credit in the world. I mean, then Mike Malone should be the coach of the year, right? Like, if Denver can do that defensively enough times, I mean, that's kind of the story here, is Denver played well defensively. And that nobody expected that, right? You expect high scoring with Denver. It's one of the best offenses in the league, one of the better offenses we've seen.
I'm buying.
And it's like, can Miami play the defense to temper them? Well, I think if you're Miami, and here's maybe where Miami, and again, it's deceptive because I don't know what to take of the fourth quarter. But, as you look at it in totality, if you're like, yeah, we held Denver to 104, you feel good about that? I think Miami feels good about that. And that's what I mean. Like, is that, should it really be more like, 109, 112? I don't know. But I think you're comfortable at 104 if you're Miami, but you got to be better offensively than that. And so a credit to Denver there for being better defensively than people, I think, ever give them credit for.
Right.
But I'm not going to count on Jimmy Butler only scoring 13 points very often in this series. Like, at some point, Spoelstra's got to just sort of turn the keys over to him. Not that he didn't do that. I don't know that he said, Jimmy, hey, we want Bam Adebayo to be the offensive. I don't think that was strategic. I think Denver did a good job.
Yeah, right.
But I don't know. I look at these things, like, I remember back to game one when the Nuggets played the Lakers, right? And the morning after that game one, it was like, boy, do the Lakers feel as good about that as Denver does? Because it feels like there was this storyline of like, that was an interesting outcome. Like, the Lakers can probably hang in this series. I don't think we have that sort of, narrative yet, right? If we see Denver come out and hold down Jimmy Butler in game 2 and they win, now I think we've got something. But even if Miami comes out and loses game 2, but Jimmy Butler goes off, it's like, okay, let's see what happens when they go back to Miami. And then at that point, your back is essentially against the wall. It's not there yet. We know what the goal for the road team is, Paul. In any 7-game series, it's to split the first 2 games and tip home court advantage, right? That's That's all road teams typically are trying to do. Of course, they're trying to win every game, but that's what you feel good about. So if you're Miami, just wash your hands of that one. We just played a grueling series. We came to altitude. We did all these things. Jimmy Butler was not himself. And we're going to take our chance in game 2 and not worry too much about it. Nikola Jokic, Paul, you brought him up. First, the moment he hit that historic triple-double, and then we'll get into some of the sound after the game.
Adebayo fakes the handoff. Goes right at Jokic. Jump shot. That won't go. And there's the triple-double. His 9th of the playoffs. And a foul as Adebayo tumbles. That's going to be 4 on Bam Adebayo. And the ovations pouring down on these Nuggets.
That's right. He said 9th, Paul, of the playoffs. 9th of this playoffs, of this postseason. 9 triple-doubles.
Unheard of, isn't it? Just almost unheard of. It's amazing. This is something that's so special. And you know, the ability for me to watch somebody who can pass the ball so well, who's so big. The guy is such a great ball handler. I mean, if he was 9 inches shorter, he'd make a great point guard, wouldn't he? I mean, that's just the way he is. I'm just in awe of his ability to pass the ball. Oh, I know he does a lot of other things. I know he rebounds. I know he scores. I know he can shoot the 3. But I'm telling you right now, you and I, between the two of us, have watched a lot of NBA basketball over the years. I'm not sure I can remember a big man who passes the ball so well, who finds the open man so well. And I don't care if it's a cutter across the baseline. I don't care if it's somebody cleared out on the 3-point line. This guy finds everybody. It's just an amazing thing to watch. And I almost think it's autopilot. I don't think he thinks about it. I think this is just something that comes natural to the guy. It happens too much. But best natural passer I think I've ever seen for a big man in my entire life at any level. But anyway, with that being said, you know, there's going to have to be some things that you do. You're going to have to press him more. You're going to have to take vision away. You're going to have to take away cutters. If you're Denver, there's things that you can do to help Jokic and Jokic, and they're going to do that. But man, you got to figure out a way if you're Miami to get Miami the ball. By the way, you think anything to the altitude? I had heard a nugget from somebody, and I can't remember where. I think it was on the broadcast or the pre-broadcast last night, that Miami came in 3 days early just to get used to the altitude, and that makes total sense. 3 days already in Denver. But it sure did look like they were sluggish at times. I don't understand. The only thing I can think of, it's got to be the altitude, because to be sluggish in the first game of the NBA Finals, no, I'm not buying that. I'm not buying that you're not mentally
playing a 7-game series too. I mean, I think there are a lot of reasons, but I don't look too much into that either, Paul, because you're like, that stage is so big. You can run on adrenaline. I think, like, it's okay to look at it and just say Denver just better tonight. Like, Denver's just better team. You don't have to make it like we thought Denver was better anyway. Like, we don't have to look for reasons. It's what we already thought. So let's talk about Nikola Jokic, but let's take a break. We'll come back. We'll hear from Jokic after the game. And I'm going to pose this question and think about it, everybody, because this is one where we'd love interaction and discussion. 869-1240 on the IHOP hotline. What does Nikola Jokic need to do to be considered one of the greatest players of all time? Outside of longevity, because what he's doing statistically, we've never seen before. We'll put it up against some players considered to be the GOATs, right? In the modern era. And we ask that question, like, what's it going to take for Jokic to be in that conversation? Because I don't think people would put him there now. I don't think a lot of people would be willing to call him the greatest player in the world right now, let alone of all time. But what will it take? We'll pose that. We'll ponder it. We'll come back and discuss it after the break. It's Albracht and Savage. It's a Friday. Jad Chambers producing. Happy to be here. Getting you ready for the weekend. More Sports Daily right after this.
AG, Jamal, Mike, Casey, like everybody who played contributes on, and it's a great win for us.
Nikola Jokic, man. I think that he is solidifying his status as the best player in the game right now, Paul. I think it's okay to say that. I think it's becoming pretty clear. I want to start having the conversation and just thinking about and considering, and I understand how early in this is for him, especially while we're still watching somebody who happens to be in this conversation play at a really high level in LeBron James. Nikola Jokic, I think, Paul, it is very fair to put his current trajectory to be in the conversation as the greatest basketball player of all time. Now, that is such a, and that's not like me trying to have like a hot take topic that's sure to be, to get people fired up. I think it's just very interesting, quite frankly, and something to at least start thinking about, because it is happening, right? I think we've got to acknowledge statistically these things are happening, right? Now, when we consider Denver's consistently in the playoffs, and now if they get this first title, I mean, this is a Denver team, Paul, that feels like it could get a couple, 2, 3, whatever. What's it going to take, do you think, for Jokic to enter that conversation in general? Because statistically, if this continues, he will be there. His best season, which was probably last year individually, 27 points a game, just under 14 rebounds, 8 assists, 1.5 steals. That's statistically his best. That season offensively is better than any offensive season Jordan or LeBron had. Okay. So Jordan had a season early in his career where he averaged 37 points a game, right, in 1986. The rebounds and the assists weren't there for him yet. And then later in his career, and I don't know which season you think was Jordan's best. They were all so good. I mean, he was consistently over 30 points.
How do you choose?
You could probably take 92, 93, right, where he was just under 33 and then had about 7 rebounds, 5.5 assists, and almost 3 steals a game. Of course, Jordan was an elite defender, as is LeBron. And LeBron certainly in his career. LeBron, probably you go back to the Cavs team, his final year in Cleveland, 27.5 points a game, just under 9 rebounds, and 9 assists. But again, Jokic has essentially averaged now a triple-double. I mean, that's what's nuts. But he's there scoring. He's not the killer as a scorer that those guys were. He's as gifted a passer as we've ever seen, especially from a big man, which you've talked about. And he's naturally going to haul in a lot of rebounds because he's huge. I think, Paul, if they can get this championship, and it'll probably take 2, 3 more after that, I think we're seeing a player who's very capable of entering that conversation. Don't you? Or is that, am I off on that?
No, well, yeah, you're a little bit off. I like the question. I guess the question that you're proposing is, what's it going to take for him to be considered? Where's he at? What's it going to take for him to become that?
Right.
That
not saying he's there now.
No,
but
well, of course he's not there. Well, I looked it up. He's got just a little over 12,000 career points right now. So, and I don't mean to be blunt or just simplistic with your question, but to be honest, what does he need? About another 14,000 points. All the triple-double talk is great. It's wonderful. Rebounds.
But he'll get there, Paul.
I think,
I mean, as long as he's healthy, as long as he's healthy, he's going to get there. I mean, I don't worry as much about that stuff. I worry more about perception and legacy.
Well, but you asked what will it take for him to get to that point, and it's points. We all look at points, not just you and I. I mean, obviously we look at points as well, but let's face it. Guys go to the Hall of Fame based upon how many points they scored. There's a few guys in the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame that weren't what they would be known as scorers. There were guys that were ball handlers. There were people that in the past, particularly, that played this game that weren't big scorers. But those days are gone. You just asked me a question: what's it going to take to get him to the Hall of Fame, to be considered one of the great players of all time, to be in that mix for, say, a top 5 player of of all time in the NBA. I'm just telling you, I think it's 14 to 15,000 more points. And you know,
Don't you think
I
it's
hate
more
to be
about
crass.
titles than that, Paul?
Well,
Don't you think it'd be more
obviously,
about titles?
I know, and I agree with that. But there's a lot of great players in the Hall of Fame that don't have a title. But a title in
Well,
the
right,
NBA,
but they're not considered the greatest of all time either.
well, they're pretty good.
Which is what I'm trying to, I know he's going to be a Hall of Famer. Like he's already a Hall of Famer.
Okay.
I'm not like,
good-
I mean to
fair
be
enough.
up there with LeBron and Jordan and Kobe and Magic and, whoever, Larry Bird, Wilt Chamberlain, the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, like into that stratosphere. And if you want to talk about the GOAT stratosphere, I think most people have that now as Michael Jordan and LeBron James, and I think I probably do too. And I think it's you kind of have to separate the game a little bit and get into a modern era. But 28 years old, he's got to get to the titles pretty quickly, I think, Paul.
That's correct.
He's a big man, and I don't, you never know. Like, is he, what LeBron does at his age, at 40, is not a fair comparison to make. Now, Dirk played very well a long time, but he slowed down at the end. So we see big guys play well late in their careers, but don't think that it's going to be like LeBron. LeBron's Brady-esque, where he looks as good as at 40 as he did at 30, right? That's not normal.
Not normal.
Jordan, I don't even think Jordan didn't.
Not normal either.
So if that's not on the table, so let's assume that it's not. Then what is it? He's 28 now. His probable prime runs another, I don't know, 7-8 years maybe.
Probably.
And in that, so if he gets one, if he gets to, let's say he gets to 3 titles, Paul, 3. If he gets to 3 titles, is that enough? Is 3 titles enough? Because it's going to be about titles for that conversation. LeBron has
that
4.
Conversation. Okay.
LeBron has 4. Jordan has what? 6, right?
6. That would be correct.
6?
6.
Yeah. So Jordan has 6. LeBron has 4. Jordan has 5 MVPs. LeBron, as far as MVPs, has 4. Jokic then has what? He has his 2, and he should have 3 probably, although I'm okay with Embiid getting it this year. But he'll have more probably now if he wins a title, especially. I think if he gets to 3, we can have the conversation. If he gets to 4, you can absolutely have the conversation. And, I don't think anybody's going to think at this point Denver's going to win 6 titles. I don't think that's going to happen. They've got a very good team, but that the NBA is too balanced right now for that to happen, in my opinion. So is it 3? If he gets to 3 titles and the statistics continue on their current trajectory, are you going to be ready at that point to say it?
Well, I
think he faces the challenge of not being American. It will always be a challenge for him, for people in this country to call him the GOAT. He's an international player. That's tough. But I don't know. I think 3 is probably the number. 4 would absolutely be a number. But I think if it's like 1, 2, I don't think anybody's ever going to be willing to do it.
Well, I know the plane in which you're speaking and how you're and what you're saying, but I'm just going to ask you a couple quick questions, just a one-word answer. What do you call a guy who wins 4 NBA championships? What do you call that guy? Champion. Well, what do you call a guy that has 1 NBA championship? Champion. So the 1 championship gets him going, gets him checked off that list. You are an NBA champion. I'm not so sure in the echelon that you're speaking of, and that we're talking about. You brought up Michael Jordan. You brought up some of the best names, some of the greatest names in the history of basketball in your last conversation. And I'm not sure that anybody will ever want to speak about, Djokovic, about him in that conversation. I'm not sure that people are going to do that no matter what. So getting the one championship is a great start. Now, if he runs off 6 or 7 before his career's over, man, we're talking another whole ball game. But I think what you're saying, and where do you need to go to be in those echelons? I don't know that this is going to be the case at all. I don't know. I don't have the feel. You're playing in Denver. You're not in Chicago. You're not in Boston. You're not in LA. I mean, you're not LeBron James, that's for sure. So I mean, I'm not sure that we're ever going to really speak about Jokic in terms of him being one of those guys. I think he has a shot at it, but I don't think so. I just don't. I don't think he's going to have the points because he only got 12,000 points now. Rebounds, he's got 6, 7. I've already turned the page off, but I think 6, 7,000 rebounds. I don't know that he's ever going to get those master stats. And
see, I don't know that people pay as much attention in the
really?
NBA to stats like that.
Really?
I know everybody's talked about. I know everybody's talked about, LeBron and the scoring record, and that obviously has significance. He's not going to catch that. But I don't. I mean, when you talk about Michael Jordan, Paul, does anybody ever, when they talk about Michael Jordan, talk about how many total points, rebounds, or assists he has?
Well, but that's because we all know he's right up there and he's in the top 3, 4, 5.
I don't have a clue where he is. I have
he is.
legitimately now. Like, I have no idea where Michael Jordan ranks statistically over his career. Don't have a clue. But I know he's got a bunch of championships, and I know we've never seen a better player in clutch moments. And so that's what I think about when I put him in that conversation. Same thing with LeBron. Like, obviously we know now he's in the store, but I don't know where he stacks up. I don't know what the top of that list looks like. I have no idea. I know that, though, when we talk about GOATs, and, if Bill Russell gets in there with his 11 titles, obviously nobody's ever getting to that again. But when, Tim Duncan, if you consider him in there, has, I think, 5. Kobe has 5. Steph has 4, right? Magic Johnson had 5. Kareem had 6, if you want to put him in there, and you probably should. It's that's what it is in the NBA. It's that. And GOAT is a little different too, because why do we call Tom Brady the GOAT? Do we call Tom Brady the GOAT, Paul, because he's the most gifted quarterback that's ever played the game, the most, individually great, talented quarterback that's ever played the game?
Mm-hmm. I got you.
No. I mean, it's not why we call him the GOAT. I don't even know if he'd be in people's top 10 of most physically gifted
Well, wait a second. He's got nearly 80,000 yards of passing. Now, that's not chopped liver, my friend.
That's not fair either, though, because the game has changed. How do you stack up what he did even against what, I don't know, Dan Marino or Steve Young did? Like,
or
they
how
played
about
different.
Sid
They
Luckman?
basically played. They played different games.
I got you. But that's not. But that's not
titles,
nothing. That's not nothing. 80,000.
I'm not saying it's. But Jokic. What I'm saying is Jokic is going to be statistically wherever he needs to be. If he continues on what we're talking about, all those stats are going to be there because he piles them up every year. So, like, in betting, Paul, there's this term called PRA, right? In betting and player prop betting. And it's combined points, rebounds, and assists that you can bet players to go over. Like, Jokic's PRA will be as high as anybody's. So I don't know. Like, that stuff's harder to quantify in basketball than it is how were they in the big moments. League MVPs is a little easier to quantify. But, man, in basketball, we quantify those championships.
Yes, we do.
And we quantify those championships.
Yeah, and Tom Brady, that's, when I think of Tom Brady, I do think of the 80,000 yards passing. I mean, I really do, because that's almost unbelievable. I was hoping, but Paul,
I think of the championship
by
trade. But you're a historian by trade,
right,
though.
Yeah. Well,
like,
you
that
have
stuff,
a point.
You run literal history museums for the sports world. It makes sense. I think in baseball, stats mean the most to us. In football, totality of stats probably mean the least to us over a career. I think we pay attention to them in a season, but in a career, we don't look at and in the NBA, we don't either a whole lot. Baseball, we do, right? But in football, in the NBA, especially in the NBA, right? Because only 5 guys play at a time. It's about those titles. And Jokic will have the stats. He'll have the accolades. He'll have the MVPs. The only thing he doesn't have is titles. He looks like he's got a pretty good shot to get the first one. And then it becomes, how many can you get after that? And I think if he gets to 3 or 4, maybe 4 is the number, because that's where Steph is and Kobe and LeBron are ahead of that. Like, maybe it's 4. If he gets to 4, I think that we will be having the conversation of him being in that GOAT rarefied air, which is crazy to think about. But it only takes that first championship, I think, to start getting that sort of consideration. Now, if he only gets one, right, then it's not going to happen. I don't know. And something else that a lot of these players, when we talk about Mike and LeBron and Kobe did later in their careers is become all-world defenders, right? They all became such great defenders. Maybe that element of Jokic's game can still come to. And look, I think defense for him is a little harder to visually see than it is for guards, because guards can just get out there and be on the ball the whole time. But, rebounding is a part of defense, right? So I don't know, but I love it. I love that we've got it. I love that it's sort of snuck up on us, which is crazy to think about because he's a 2-time MVP, maybe should be 3-time MVP. And Denver's had really good teams that have been a bit snake bitten until this year. But man, I had our buddy Bruce Hurdle on with me last weekend on CBS Sports Radio to sort of ask that question, like, is he the greatest player in the world right now? And Bruce's answer was pretty emphatically yes. And I think he's right. But I think, here's the other part of that question, Paul. What would we think of Jokic if he was a Knick or a Laker?
Oh, my gosh. Yes. Well, that would be a whole different story, wouldn't it? And by the way, we love Bruce Hurdle. I love Bruce Hurdle. But he's also stationed in Denver right now.
I know. That's why I wanted his perspective, though, because I know he's not gonna blow smoke on that. He's got too much pride in what he does to do that. But I think the point is, like, we've been seeing this and have known this for a couple of years now. Everybody else hasn't. And I think being in Denver has something to do with it. I think being international has something to do with it. I mean, Giannis fought it a little bit, Paul, when he was going ballistic. And that's the other thing, too. Let's be clear about this. Like, this isn't a foregone conclusion. We were having these conversations about Giannis, Paul, and we don't anymore. Why? Because they have just the one title, right? And, like,
might be.
That's why. That's why. Because statistically, Giannis was right there with anybody.
Right. By the way, Michael Jordan, number 5 all-time scorer, 32,000 points. He's still 6,000 behind LeBron James. But you know something? You've kind of made a good point, because Dirk Nowitzki, number 6 all-time scorer, Wilt Chamberlain, who won what? One? Was it just one, or maybe no NBA championships, number 7 all-time scorer. And, we don't talk about him. We talk about him dominating. We talk about him changing the game, but we don't talk about him in terms of a LeBron James or a Michael Jordan, do we? We really don't. And so, something? You may actually be on to something. I'm pained to say that. Jad, don't think less of me, but I think Jacob's on to something here, maybe.
And don't misunderstand what I'm saying either. Like, I am not saying he's there right now. I'm saying
he can't be.
That if he can get one, we can see a path to it, right?
Well,
we can
the start
see
of a path at
to
least.
getting there.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's what I think is something to watch and, like, file away and remember about watching this series. If Denver ultimately gets it, you can remember it as perhaps that moment where one of the GOATs really took off in that legacy, because it always starts with titles, right? And that's an interesting thing, I think, about the series that I don't want to overlook. The other interesting thing individually in the series, we asked this question yesterday, Jimmy Butler. We're never going to consider him as a GOAT, but could he enter the conversation as one of the great killers, right? One of the great, clutch, whatever that thing is that we have a really hard time defining that LeBron and Kobe were so great at. Could Jimmy Butler get into that conversation?
Well, he better pick it up if that's the case. He better pick it up.
We'll talk about his part of it as we continue to roll on Sports Daily.
.97.5 and 1240 KFH.
Brought to you by Forever Lawn. Forever Lawn South Central Kansas has the best reputation in the Midwest for artificial turf projects of all sizes. Forever Lawn sports grass is requested by both schools and homeowners to be installed at football fields, baseball diamonds, bullpens, and even indoor training facilities. Can't get grass to grow or tired of paying outrageous water bills? Forever Lawn South Central Kansas can even repair existing artificial and natural source surfaces. Ready to see what Forever Lawn can do for you? Call 316-688-0722. Tell them you heard about them on KFH.
50% off. Have you ever wondered how Mike Seltzer creates such stunning, elegant jewelry and then sells it for 50% off? Well, we may never know, but it certainly shows how much his customers mean to him. Think about it. Mike Seltzer Jewelers is having their anniversary, yet they're the ones giving you 50% off as Mike's way of thanking the community. That's right, impeccable service and truly the best prices and the most beautiful jewelry. They really do have it all. And at 50% off, everyone can have the jewelry they've always wanted but never thought they could afford. Mike Seltzer Jewelers, 2929 North Rock Road in Comatera Center. Stop in during May and June and celebrate their anniversary by allowing Mike to give you a heartfelt gift. The chance to own something exquisite in diamonds and gold, something you'll cherish forever at half the price you'd normally pay. Mike Seltzer Jewelers, where elegance is now affordable.
Max is the streaming service for every mood. Today you're feeling like Khaleesi, the Mother of Dragons.
I was born to rule the Seven Kingdoms.
Tomorrow you may feel like Harry Potter.
Expecto Patronum!
Sometimes you feel a little grouchy.
And I love being grouchy.
Or you feel like an adventure.
I'm on my way to Flavortown!
And sometimes you just need to laugh with friends.
Pivot!
No matter what mood you're in, Max has it all. Max, the one to watch. Subscription required. Visit max.com.
Yingling Aviation is a leader in the aviation industry in Wichita and around the world. We're innovating, leading, and hiring A&P mechanics and more. Receive up to a $2,500 sign-on bonus, competitive pay, health, dental, vision, and life insurance, 401k, paid vacation, and more. We offer a family atmosphere, creative culture, and the opportunity to advance in your career. Join the Yingling Aviation team and grow with us. All positions, apply online today at yinglingaviation.com while openings are still available.
Taco Bell and Pizza Hut invite you to tune in this Friday, June 2nd, for the live simulcast of the Riverfest Textron Aviation Opening Night Fireworks on 103.7 KEYN. Be sure to visit your local Taco Bell or Pizza Hut location, bringing you all the sights and sounds of Riverfest fireworks. Taco Bell and Pizza Hut. Tune in this Friday, June 2nd, for the live simulcast of the Riverfest Textron Aviation Opening Night Fireworks on 103.7 KEYN.
Hurry up! Yeah, we'd all like to. Hot water hog.
That's it, family meeting. We can all enjoy long, steaming, hot showers. Even the last in line, which it seems is always me. But go ahead, have that imaginary argument of what you should have said. Take your time. With our new high-efficiency Navien tankless water heater, I'll never take a cold shower again. Visit tanklessmadesimple.com to learn more.
Hey everyone, Boomer Esiason here, and for Championship Team, every player needs to be a perfect fit. It's just like your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts or accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure every part you need fits right the first time. Just look for the green check. With over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. So get the right parts, the right fit, at the right prices at ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
Ladies and gentlemen, Bob and Tom.
We have a guy who was caught smuggling 12 gold bars. That's right. You got a story about it? Real young.
I'm such a fool, trying to be a mule. I just got busted with an ass full of gold. Must look suspicious, just being ambitious. They went searching, found an ass full of gold. It was in a butt.
Bob and Tom in the morning and highlights all day long.
Bob and Tom, mornings. This is 97.5 and 1240 KFH.
You're listening to Sports Daily with Jacob and Tommy. Still to come, Jim Rome at 11, right here on KFH.
It's time to get back to the sports talk.
All right, let's do this thing. Go!
Sports Daily is on KFH.
I'm always going to pass on. My teammates have so much belief and faith in them that they're going to take and make shots. If they can't, then they're going to make the next play. That's how we've been playing all year long. That's not going to change now that we're in the finals. Maybe I have to be a little bit more aggressive. I got to put pressure on the rim. Me with no free throws, that was all on myself, nobody else. So, we'll definitely correct that next game, but only I can do that.
Love that from Butler. Love that accountability. He's 100% right. He's got to get to the line. That's such a part of his game. Man, it's not. How do you not root for Jimmy Butler, by the way, Paul? Like, he's got that thing that we all love, right? Like, just the best attitude for a competitor. And yeah, he's right. He's got confidence in his teammates, but yeah, he's got to score more, and yeah, he's got to get to the line more.
Right.
And that is on him. And that's great to hear because that's what it's going to take. But not a good start.
The Heat are going to be as successful as Jimmy Butler is going to be. And a lot of times you don't really have players that you can say that because somebody can be off. Somebody's always going to be off a little bit, but you can't have Jimmy Butler be off. There's other guys on that team that can be off, but you can't have him off. And so he's what makes it goes. As a matter of fact, energy, speaking of energy, Jimmy Butler didn't have that normal energy, but then again, when you're not scoring, when you're not making a difference like he normally does, when you're not shooting threes and making things happen, it affects a basketball team. It affects any sports team, as a matter of fact. And so, yes, Jimmy Butler is the key to this whole thing. And I know there's a lot of good players on the Miami Heat, but if you narrow it down, Jimmy Butler's going to make this franchise either win a championship or not win a championship. And so I think that he understands that. He was self-deprecating to a certain extent. He said it is me. He has an understanding of what is going to be expected from him. He understands that scoring, 14, 15, 16 points isn't going to get it done. He's going to have to be up. He's going to have to be up around 30. He's going to have to be up with 6, 7 threes. There's a lot of things that he's got to do. If that happens, man, oh man, it's a different series, isn't it?
Yeah, it's he'll be all right. They're going to do well, and they're going to get to the line better. That's why I say I don't want to take just too much away from game one. I want to see the Heat play more of their game and see how that looks in a series. That's all. Right. I just want to see that because I want to see Butler play well. I want to see them get to the free throw line, do some of the things that makes them good. And if that's not good enough, then it's like, okay, they're not good enough. But let's just see that. I don't think they're going to win the series. Don't get me wrong. But I'm not ready to call this series over or anything like that.
No.
We've got Riverfest coming up, Paul. And game 2, by the way, is on Sunday. We got Riverfest coming up. You just heard a spot there in the break about opening day, which is today. And this weekend, you've got the Riverfest Roller Derby. So Saturday from 10 to 5 at the Ice Center. You've got fast skating, hard-hitting competition. A flat track derby will include juniors, women's, co-ed skaters, celebrity skater Tony Dusing, who's our boss here on KFH. I didn't know Tony had that in him.
Grace on blades right there, baby. Grace on blades.
Can't wait to hear about it. Tony in the Derby. And then on Sunday, you've got a celebrity egg toss from 4 to 5. That'll be Steve and Ted taking the thing there for us here at our Odyssey family. Steve and Ted in the mornings, of course, over on KNSS. And I've done that egg toss. It's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of pressure in that egg toss.
I've been
a part of that before. Yeah.
Okay.
I've also been a part of the ice cream eating contest, which is, I believe, on Wednesday. It says we got Tommy there, but he's a celebrity scooper, not a celebrity eater, which is what I had to do with that thing, which was brutal. You know what my strategy was in an ice cream eating contest, Paul?
What's that?
I let it sit there, and I was stirring it, trying to get it to melt so I could just drink it. I thought I was so smart.
How did that work? Because that makes sense to me.
It made sense, but other people just ate it and ate a whole bunch more than me. I was like, all right, I'm going to take this L.
Well, 869-1240
is the number to call on the IHOP hotline. We'll come back. We've got giveaways coming up in hour number 2. We'll switch gears away from the NBA Finals a little bit. Nick Saban headed to Washington. What could go wrong? We'll be right back.
KFH. Royals Baseball on KFH, brought to you in part by Icon Collision Center and South Central Kansas Problem Gambling Task Force.
Jacob Albracht, Tommy Castor. This is Sports Daily on Wichita's #1 sports radio, 97.5 and 1240 KFH.
All right, welcome back in, everybody. We've spent the majority of our first hour on the NBA Finals. Happy to go back there with you at Game 1, 869-1240. If you missed any of the conversation, you can always go back and listen on the free Odyssey app as well. Just search KFH. It's Jacob Albracht. It's Paul Savage with you. I appreciate Paul being in as Tommy celebrates the new addition to his family. Congratulations to the Castors. Tommy will be back with you next week, as well as Paul. I'm taking a little trip, so you'll have the two of them next week, so that'll be a lot of fun. Paul, let's switch gears a little bit as we go into hour number 2 here. The IHOP hotline is open, 869-1240. Jad will take your calls. But, Paul, college athletics in the mix. Two things that we want to touch on here in this hour are, the contingency going to Washington to continue to lobby NIL, and then UConn. A lot of rumors starting to swirl that UConn may be an addition to the Big 12, which will be interesting. But we'll get into that a little later. Let's start with this lobbying effort. Nick Saban, other SEC, administrators, coaches, lobbyists headed to Washington to try and push for some federal regulation to the NIL. Now, I think there is a fine line and a slippery slope in all this that I'm having a bit of a tough time navigating. When yesterday or the day before, whichever day, we talked about things like Nick Saban talking about unionization and all that. To me, that's Nick Saban screaming salary cap. Let's get everybody spending at the same level because, we don't like not being, the big dogs here. I think that's all smoke. This NIL federal regulation stuff gets interesting, Paul, because states do have different laws, and that is a challenge. And that's a difficult challenge, right? What you can do in some states, you can't do in others. And so that part of it, and this is what, we've talked extensively with Kevin Saul about this. I understand that component and that challenge, and I don't have any problem with that component and that challenge. However, I do think there is far too much chatter involved in this that involves how much guys are making, right, in the transfer portal. And so I think those are two very separate things, right? We got this down to one transfer for free. I think that solves that for me. That's good enough for me. I don't want any more of this. You have to apply every time you want to leave. I don't like that. One time for free, and then you have to apply. I'm okay with that. As far as having an issue, though, with the Wild West nature of guys getting paid to play or how much they're making, again, we've talked about this a billion times. You better leave that part of it alone because that's that dangerous and slippery slope. So if you've got all these people going to lobby that are just lobbying for uniform rules state to state, okay. Let's not have any of those rules limit what players can earn, and I can get on board with that. But if it's anything more than that, if it's any sort of, effort to limit what players can make, we got a big problem.
Right.
And at that point, let's start talking about revenue sharing.
Right. We have a caller on the line. We'll get to it in just a second, but I just want to point out one thing. We did this story, 2 days ago? I think it was 2 days ago. It might have been yesterday, but I think it was 2 days ago. We did this story with Nick Saban. I really thought, Jacob, that this was going to be a throwaway story. One of those little fun stories you and I always enjoy, which makes sports so special. These little stories that you don't know what's going to happen. And I really thought this was going to be one of those stories, a little throwaway story about Nick Saban. Well, man, I think I'm wrong. I think I was wrong on that. I think this is going to be a big deal. I think people like Nick Saban are going to throw their weight behind this kind of potential legislation from the United States Congress, of all people. I think they're going to try to do everything they can to put as many clamps down and try to get as many controls in place to control whatever young men are doing, however much money they can make, to wherever they can go. They're going to try to clamp down. They're going to become basically the United States NCAA. That's where I think this is headed. I didn't really realize it. I can't believe that I'm so wrong on a story. But the good thing was it only took me 2 days to figure this out. But I finally figured it out. Jacob, you were onto something. I think you always thought that this was going to be a real issue. I wasn't so sure, but I think now I'm pretty sure it's a big deal, Jacob. It's a big deal.
Well, if you're college, if you're, and I don't want to say it's the NCAA but if you're the powers that be in college athletics and you're trying to schmooze lawmakers, who's your biggest fish to do that with? Like,
Well,
who is the guy that's going to walk in every room and lawmakers be like, oh my God, there he is. Let's try to be his friend. It's Nick Saban.
That's Nick Saban.
It's
yeah,
Nick Saban.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
you're right.
And so I, if I'm on that side of it, yeah, that's the first person I'd call. Like, Nick, we need you here. Like, come out.
Yeah.
So again, like it's what is the ultimate goal? Nick Saban individually, with a lot of his talk, again, unions, Nick Saban doesn't like that other people are spending more money than he is. Like, he doesn't like that. Like, that part of it is pretty clear to me. He consistently gripes about it and complains about it and calls out Texas A&M because Texas A&M spends all this money. I think I hope that we have two separate things happening here. I hope that he's not in Washington to lobby and go on this personal vendetta against some schools spending more money than Alabama because their stranglehold on the industry is loosening. It clearly is. That I'd have a problem with. And I'm not sure that that's not what's happening. But I'm trying to envision this scenario where Saban is there altruistically to figure out a way to, come up with some regulation that at least gives uniform guidelines, right? Here's what we can and cannot do. None of these rules that I'm going to mention limit what players can earn. Again, that's the elephant in the room. Does anything that's being talked about or proposed limit what players can earn? Because if that's the goal, then you can miss me with all of it, right? I don't care. I don't even want to start the conversation. If what you're about to say puts any limits on what players can earn, I don't want to hear it, because I think we're well beyond that. Those days, the good old days of this absolutely bonkers, borderline illegal business model that college athletics have run for a long, long time, miss me with all of that. So don't even bring it up if it has anything to do with limiting what players can earn. If it doesn't, though, and it's more of a let's get some guidelines in place to take care of the players, make sure there are no bad actors in this, make sure that there's no tampering, make sure that, I'm on board with that because I think it is necessary. But I think you've got a slippery slope there. And I just don't know that I buy Nick Saban and the SEC contingency being there if it in some way doesn't try to limit what players can earn.
Yeah.
And Paul, unless you're going to revenue share, you just don't have any business doing that.
Right. So it's not about the children. It's not about them, is it?
Right. Exactly.
Well, that's pretty interesting. I think I'm agreeing with you now. I mean, I thought it was, I didn't know there was anything to this. I thought it didn't have a chance. Jacob, that's really what I thought. I thought there's no chance that anything like this happens. But I'll tell you what, I think I could be wrong.
Let's open up the IHOP hotline here. We'll jump around a little bit. John's been patiently waiting, wants to get back to the NBA conversation. John, welcome into Sports Daily. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you, guys. Love the show. Love listening to the comments and everything. I just wanted to point out my take on the game last night. I don't think it was as much Butler costing them the game. I agreed it would have helped out a lot if he got to the free throw line. But I could tell you in watching the previous series, Bam Adebayo played a lot better than he did against Boston. And Martin was having a world of trouble for Miami. Caleb Martin was not playing as well as he did against Boston. But the real problem in this series is Strus. The guy was 0 for 10 from the field, 0 for 9 from three-point range. And if you take those numbers out on their shooting, they shot pretty well as a team. Now, the big difference is when Tyler Hero, who could come back for game 2, if he comes back in and this guy's averaging over 15 points a game like he was during the season, and he becomes a starter again and Strus goes back to the bench, you're looking at, even if he made a third of his three-point shots, if he made 3 of them, that's 9 points in an 11-point final. That becomes a 2-point game. And, Miami's not sitting their starters the last 2 minutes of the game. I just think it's a different series, and I think they played really well. Denver likes an up-tempo game. They want to put it in 120 points a game. And Miami keeping them to 104 was really, in the low hundreds is a success.
Well, that's a good take.
Share my take with you guys.
Jacob, that's a pretty good take, really. I think he's on to something there.
Is.
Go ahead,
It for
Jacob.
sure is.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, look, I think that the role players for Miami clearly have to be better. And I think the point, John, and I'm pretty sure Paul agrees with this, the role players can be great and it not be enough. It's hard to imagine Miami with sustained success in this series that doesn't start with at least Jimmy Butler being great. I think that's the point on Butler. Yeah, the role player, Miami, and look, Miami lost by 11 points, and you feel like they played really poorly. So, and that's why I don't want to definitively say this series is over, anything crazy like that after game 1, because I absolutely envision Miami playing better as this series goes on, right? And are they 11 points better within a game? I don't know. But I do think they can play better, but it starts at least with Jimmy Butler. And yeah, the role players are going to have to be good too. Tyler Hero's an interesting X factor. I don't know what Tyler Hero is going to do because he hasn't been there, right? He's been gone for most of the playoffs. So I don't know.
And go ahead, John.
No, I was just going to say thank you, guys. So I think he's going to make a big difference. But when you got a guy that's 0 for 10 from the field and 0 for 9 from three-point range.
You're right.
And the one other thing I wanted to note was that Jokic, if you notice, he didn't get his rebounds when Adebayo was in the game. He got the good majority of his rebounds in the game when he was out of the game. I mean, I was watching specifically just because I had a prop bet on Jokic's rebounds, so I had special interest in it. But he really didn't do the job against Adebayo. And Adebayo out rebounded him. So it could get interesting, but Gordon's the X factor because he just played phenomenal.
Yeah, I'm going to start looking, and we appreciate the call, John. Good stuff. I think the prop I'm going to start watching is that assist prop for Jokic because he's clearly willing to not have to be the offensive force. And yeah, Bam Adebayo will make a difference, I think, in the rebounding. But good stuff. We're going to have call us, Monday morning, and John, and let's get through game 2, and we'll see if any of this stuff changed and if it made a difference in the series. Let's go to now, Jad, you may have to jump in here a little bit with us. Scott wants to talk about the NHL. 869-1240 on the IHOP hotline. Scott, what's on your mind?
Best playoffs in sport, guys, the NHL Stanley Cup final. And it looks like we're going to have a heck of a series here. Vegas Golden Knights have been pretty much rolling all year long. You got Florida that takes out basically everybody who's any power to the East coming together. The story of this playoff series is going to be Aiden Hill, the goalkeeper for the Knights. He was their number 5, basically, goalkeeper, and he had to take over in the middle of the Edmonton series when their stars got injured. And the kid's been amazing. The Knights' depth is loaded. They're loaded on all 4 lines. But you're going to get some guys over in Florida. Florida is loaded right now. They're getting everybody back. Have you guys been paying attention much at all? And do you have any thoughts on the way the series is going to go?
Well, Scott, let me just point out what my buddy Jad Chambers has told me about this series. Florida probably has a better team, or a better goaltender. Las Vegas has a better team. Advantage Florida. Jacob, take it from there.
Yeah, listen, I agree with you, Scott. I don't agree that I'm not going to sit here and say it's the best playoff series because it isn't for me. But I will tell you that I absolutely love the unpredictability of the Stanley Cup playoffs. I think it's amazing. I have enjoyed. There's not another sport probably that I can sit and watch, know nothing about the players, know nothing about the strategy involved, and know very little about, how teams got where they are, and enjoy a game as much as I can just sitting and watching a Stanley Cup playoff game. That's the truth.
I got you on that.
I don't.
Before we go back to
I can't do that with soccer,
No,
Paul. I can't do that with But I turn on hockey and I'm like, man, this is fantastic.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about anything that's going on right now, but it's amazing.
Scott, before I throw it back to you, because I want another comment from you, let me throw it over to Jad Chambers, because I'm going to tell you right now, Scott, Jad Chambers has really made me interested in this Cup Finals. I mean, it's interesting to me to a certain extent. I'm like Jacob. I'm really not very knowledgeable about it, but Jad has helped me along with the Cup playoffs. And Jad, your takes right now, you gave me some great takes. Give Scott a couple of great takes, and he's going to think we're all geniuses.
Well, I don't know if he's going to think I'm much of a genius, because I was predicting a, Colorado or Boston Stanley Cup win, both out in the first round. It was really kind of shocking to me how the whole thing turned out. I was not expecting Florida versus Vegas to wind up being our final, but now that that's what we have, you mentioned, I mentioned it to you earlier, we've got Florida talking about being a team of destinies is kind of what they're all talking about there. And with the guy like Matthew Tkachuk playing, you've got a guy you talked about that X factor earlier when we were talking about the NBA, the guy who can make that clutch play right there in time. I don't think Florida is quite the team overall that Vegas is, but they've got Tkachuk, who has that X factor, and their goaltender Bobrovsky, he's been playing out of his mind. So you've got, I don't know, it's going to be really interesting. I wouldn't necessarily predict a 6 or 7 game series, but I don't think it's going to be quick. I don't think it's going to be over in 4. But then again, this particular Stanley Cup playoffs, I've been wrong about everything else.
Scott,
the depth of Vegas right now with their four lines, you got 16 guys who have scored goals so far in the playoffs. I think that's going to be the fact. And the one guy who hasn't really done much scoring is Jack Eichel. The guy that basically mortgaged the house on, and he's not putting in any goals in. He's getting assists and everything. If Eichel comes alive, this thing could be a blowout. But you're right. The goalkeeper for Florida has been absolutely stunning, and then with Tkachuk and the Stahl brothers on the other side, they are starting to pick up their offense. So this should be one heck of a series.
Yeah, there you go. Well, Scott, you've got to be absolutely blown away about how well Sports Daily breaks down hockey, aren't you?
Oh,
Thank you, Scott, for the call. You guys done talking Canadian? I don't speak Canadian.
Yeah, I know.
Very well.
I
So
had no idea what Jad was talking
check back
about
in.
that whole time.
I'll check back in here.
Oh my gosh, that's great.
We do love the Stanley Cup playoffs. Obviously, we love the Wichita Thunder here locally.
Oh, we do. Sure, we do.
That's where
There's no
Tommy's
question.
at. I just, it is. I'm like truthfully, like there isn't to me a better sport to walk in, know nothing about, and enjoy it as much as hockey. I mean, I think live hockey is as fun as anything, and I think even on TV when you're into the Stanley Cup now or Stanley Cup playoffs. I just try, like at night, I've loved that there's been a lot of West Coast flavor to it, because like I come down where you see me now, if you're on our video stream on Facebook and YouTube, and I come down here, we start the day here and end the day here, start the day here, then do a little iced tea, Paul, go work TV for a while, then come back home and work a little more on the businesses. And man, I flip it on. I don't know anything about it. It's late at night and it's fantastic. I'm like, this is great. Like, I don't know anything about who these players are, but this is fantastic. The energy is always good. Like that's what I love about hockey, and especially into the Stanley Cup playoffs.
Right. Speed of the game is unbelievable. I don't think there is another game that the speed stays at the level that it is with such ease. And, it's a game that I don't know a lot about, to be real truthful. And I'm kind of like you in a way. There was a time when I really understood
I
and
did
knew a
too.
lot of
Early
players.
90s.
Yeah,
Yep.
and I remember, gosh, I'm gonna make a confession. I even bought some wax boxes of hockey cards. Can you believe that? Paul Savage buying hockey cards.
Yeah, I can imagine that because you're a collector. But yeah, I love it. And there was a time in the early 90s before the strike where I did know all the star players at least, and I watched a ton of hockey then. But then you don't have time to know and follow everything. Some people do. I certainly don't. 869-1240 is the IHOP hotline. Appreciate those calls. We'll keep it open for you the rest of the way. Just finding out that we've got some tickets to George Michael Reborn, a tribute to George Michael and Wham. It'll be Saturday, June 17th at the Orpheum Theater. Let's give away a pair of tickets to that.
Good, let's do
right
it.
here on Sports Daily. First caller during the break. Paul and I are going to come back. What do we make of these UConn to the Big 12 rumors that are swirling around? We'll hit that next. Get us a winner on the IHOP hotline and roll forward on a Friday here on Sports Daily. All right, welcome back, everybody. Paul, how's that coffee?
Well, I'm going to tell you right now, here's the amazing thing about going black. I really like this doing it this way. Do you know how much time I am saving in my life now? It takes time to get the creamer, pour it in, stir it, clean up your mess, set the cup down to do all this. You go in, you take your cup, you put it under the nozzle, you pull the handle, you walk away with the coffee. I'm saving 45 seconds per cup of coffee I am adding to my life right now. How about that? And I didn't ever really realize drinking black coffee extends your life.
Yeah, it's one of those studies where
Jad's
you can find
Jad,
one that
what's
says
so
it's
funny
good
about
for you.
that?
You can find one that says it's bad for you. You can find all kinds of stuff. But if you use those 45 seconds you're collecting, Paul, go over to HTO and let them, if you want to get a creative coffee, let them give you one of the new iced coffees out there.
Oh, yeah. Rocco and I are going by this
8 or 9 of
afternoon.
them.
Yeah, Joe Rocco.
Try one. One of the new ices. People are loving it. We just rolled those out Monday or Tuesday, and people are enjoying the new offerings there. So they'll take care of your creative coffee needs. They also have black coffee, Paul, which is what I'm drinking right now and drink every morning, and it is amazing.
Yeah, you're no bigger of a man than me, I can tell you that.
And Jacob, I got to say this: I probably will also be there sometime this afternoon, so I'll be trying one of those myself.
You know what we need to do,
Attaboy.
Jad?
What
in celebration of your appearance? Let's get you some free coffee to give away.
Okay.
Here on the show. I think we're out of coffee cards there at the studio, right? We've got some tea that we can give away, but we're out of coffee. We're gonna get Jad some coffee cards and get those out to you guys so you can check out what we're talking about over at HTO.
Jad,
that's my wife and I's business.
Yeah, you need to fill up your new bottle, your new HTO bottle that I shamed Jacob into giving you.
There's no shame. I left it there for him. What are you talking
about? You were going to give
Paul?
him a discount price. No, you were going to discount the price for him, weren't you?
Gotta eat, Paul. Family's gotta eat. 869-1240 is the IHOP hotline. Okay, so let's talk about UConn, Paul, and preface this with these are like loose internet rumblings, but we know that UConn's been on the radar, and we know that the Big 12 wants to expand, and we know that West has been the direction, but it does also make sense to get some exposure back east to join now Central Florida and West Virginia. And UConn is a really interesting program. Our defending national basketball champion. We know that the Big 12 is trying to create basketball value here. UConn football has been no good for a long time. Do you think that UConn is a good candidate for expansion into the Big 12? So as we understand it, the contract currently states that the Big 12 just did, with the additions of current Power 5 schools, that they can be added and not water down basically the value, that school could come into the league and get the same deal they're all getting. If it's not that, then you've got to get approval because that could conceivably water down the take for everybody else. UConn's not a Power 5 school right now. They're in the Big East. So one, it's in ESPN's backyard. We know how much ESPN values UConn. I wonder if UConn's going to come on board, Paul, it's almost certainly going to have to be with the stipulation that ESPN would sign off on it coming in as a member at the same value of the current schools. Because if that doesn't happen, everybody's going to vote no, right? Why wouldn't you vote no? You don't want to water down your own value. But if you can get them in there, even with their not good football program, but their amazing basketball program, an amazing women's basketball program, an amazing other sports programs that they have, I think UConn's a no-brainer. But it all depends at that point on ESPN and if they take him as a full member or not.
Well, here's the thing. We thought we've had this story for a year, maybe a little longer than a year, and we've talked about UConn. I mean, briefly, not a whole lot, but briefly, because I didn't think it was going to happen. But now there's a go back east, pick up some teams for Florida, for Central Florida, for West Virginia, pick up a couple, and I think there might be room for another one or two, probably to get them to somewhere around 6 would be my guess. Don't know, but UConn makes sense because of the success they've had in basketball. And who's to say once you become a member of the Big 12, there's a little cachet when it comes to starting getting football players. And I believe that that the Big 12 would be great for UConn. But I'm sitting here thinking to myself, you know something, a year ago, I wasn't too hot on UConn joining the Big 12. I'm not so sure right now with where things are going, with the presence that the Big 12 wants to have to the east side of the country, the presence the Big 12 wants to have in the West. It might be a no-brainer in that effort to get, well, to even more than 16 teams. I don't know if that's the case, but I kind of like the idea. I'm not opposed to it.
I like
at
20.
all.
I like 20 teams. I
Me
like
too.
East and
Me too.
West.
I do too.
10 and 10.
Yep.
I think I don't have a problem with it.
I
And I
agree.
think that's I don't know there is concern that you lose like the camaraderie and everything that you have in a league. I get that. And I think it's warranted, right? You can get too big.
Sure.
But I think in the current landscape, you kind of can't get too big because it's defense, like you're playing defense at that point and trying to sweeten these deals so that you don't get poached, right? You're trying to elevate your league to where the SEC and the Big Ten are currently. And I think that's what, Brett Yormark's trying to do. And I think the only way to do that is to do, some more expansion, some further expansion. Where's that sweet spot? I don't know. I don't think 20 is too big. I think it's very manageable because then you just split it, right? And then you kind of have two, for football anyway, you kind of have two little conferences, So I think that's okay. I think you can do 20. I think you can do 24, honestly. 2 12-team divisions that sort of play the same kind of schedule you've always played that just meet in the title game. I don't have a problem with that either. So I think there's room. I think that UConn would be, again, if you can get ESPN and the networks who are doing the deals to sign off on them as a member since they're not currently Power 5, which I think that you probably can. I think it's an interesting one. But if you can, then yeah, I like UConn in the Big 12.
Well, Brigham Young was not a Power 5 when they joined.
Well, but they did the deal after they joined.
Right.
The new additions came in, and then they did the deal. Now,
all right.
Now the deal is in place, and so now any further additions have to go through that process.
Right.
Whereas if they add Colorado, right, Colorado can just get grandfathered in, or Arizona State. You don't have to worry about it with them, but with UConn or with I don't know, Memphis, if they're ever a candidate, or South Florida or whomever, you've got to get a sign off then from the networks, basically, I think, to take them on as full members. I think that capability exists in the contract, but it's not guaranteed. So then what you would have, let's say you go to ESPN and say, hey, we want to add UConn. And ESPN's like, well, we're not going to give them $31 million a year or whatever. Then you got to vote on it. And if I'm any school in the Big 12, I would say, well, no, because that's going to water down the money currently in there. We're not going to do that. So, that's a stipulation that almost has to happen. UConn's interesting because they are in ESPN's backyard, right? Bristol, Connecticut's right there. UConn gets all kinds of run, and it makes sense. And UConn's got a national brand. Let's not kid ourselves. If we were just talking about basketball here, it'd be different. Yeah. And maybe we are just talking about basketball. Who knows? Maybe UConn football can stay as an independent. I don't know.
No. It won't be an independent. It needs to go to the Big 12 because I think that's kind of like a sleeping giant in football, isn't it? I think it could be.
They've had some years. No, it's not either.
No, but once you start playing a Big 12 schedule and once you join the Big 12, that's going to open a lot of eyes. It's going to give a lot of people the chance to see Big 12 football in basically the northeast part of the country where it's a huge population. Yes, go ahead.
It is. Is Rutgers ever taken advantage of that situation?
But it's in New Jersey. That's different. Sorry about that if you're from New Jersey. But no.
Merrill Teller takes offense.
Oh, yeah. But wait a second. Let me answer that question. Also, Rutgers is in the Big Ten. And the Big Ten, in that particular case, with what we're looking at, is basically going to be those Rust Belt type states. It's going to be those states that run from, Pennsylvania over to Minnesota. It's kind of like it wouldn't quite fit in the Big Ten, but in the Big 12, come join the party. We're a diverse conference. We have teams all the way out to Utah.
Paul,
all the way
great
down to
football program has existed in the last, decade, 2 decades in the northeast part of the country?
Well, Syracuse has had some pretty darn good football teams and has had some pretty darn good football players come out of Syracuse. That I do know for sure. So I would say Syracuse would probably be
You
one
call
of those
Syracuse
teams.
a great. You call Syracuse a great football program.
Well, they've had their moments.
Sure, they have. Lots of teams have had their moments, but let's not beat around the bush here. That's not a great football
Well,
region.
why can't it be great? Why you tell me why the
'Cause,
northeast part of the country can't be a great
let's
football
say
part of the country?
let's say baby Paul Savage is sitting there as a 5-star recruit.
All right.
And I'm coming at you from Austin, Texas, or wherever, or Alabama, and I'm like Georgia, and I'm like, hey, in the winter time, you can either play up there, or you can come down here where weather's still nice and play down here.
Sure,
Where's
I got
baby
you.
Paul Savage going to go play?
Yeah, I got you. But even those teams aren't going to be able to take every really great baby Paul
No,
Savage.
I'm not saying
that
they can't be a better program. I'm not saying
All
they
right.
can't be a better program. Of course they can, because they have nowhere to go.
And
but
by
up,
the
right?
way, my
I'm just
baby
saying.
I was just going to say, my baby Savage is going to ask the question, how much NIL's in it for me? So there you go.
That's right.
Well,
That's right.
I'm not lying.
Well,
am I?
and that's
I'm not lying.
No, you're not. I'm not saying they can't get better. Of course they can. They can't get worse. But if you add UConn and you're the Big 12, you're not adding UConn because you think it's going to give you this national championship opportunity for your league. You're adding them because you get one of the best basketball programs in the country. You're adding them because you get into a fantastic television situation, and you hope that the football program can at least rise to the Big 12 standard, right? That's all you hope for. Can that program reach the level that the rest of the league sort of rotates through? I mean, there are no more bad football programs in the Big 12. That's one thing about, the additions that have been made in the league as it currently stands. Paul, who's the worst football program in the Big 12? Because I don't have an answer.
Right now? Boy, that would be tough. I would, I guess Texas Tech. No, I don't even know. I don't know the Texas Tech. No, probably not.
Because they rotate through just fine. I mean, Tech's probably in the conversation, but they're not bad. Like, it rotates. I'm not saying it like who do we think is going to be the worst next year? That's not what I mean. I just mean like in general terms, are there any
Kansas
bad football programs? Yeah, Kansas would be it, but Kansas is on the way up too.
They're rising. They've got some stock. They've got some skin in the game now.
The floor is pretty high in the Big 12.
That's
Can
right.
UConn, if they joined, reach that floor is all that really matters. And in the Big 12 now, especially without Texas and Oklahoma, we're going to see rotation at the top of the league.
Right.
I don't think any team is going to just sit at the top for a long time like Oklahoma has. And that's not going to happen. We'll have some rotation. I mean, Kansas State certainly thinks they have an opportunity to do that, and maybe they do. But it'll be fine. I think UConn makes a lot of sense. I think UConn makes sense for the league. If you can get ESPN on board with it, I think it would be a fine and fantastic addition. And then you get Colorado. What does that leave us with? How many are we going into with next year? We had 10 and we added 4, so 14. And we'll pretend like Texas and Oklahoma aren't there.
They're already gone. Okay.
Right. So what are you at, 12 again? So that gives you, UConn and Colorado and Arizona State. And then you got to look and wonder what's going to happen with the ACC, because I think ultimately once the Big 12 gets to about 24, they're probably going to sit there, even regardless of what happens with the ACC. I don't know, but yes, if UConn can come, if they have the capability and ESPN would sign off on it, I would add UConn tomorrow.
Well,
I'm on board with that addition.
Your point that you made earlier in this conversation, I think, is the best conversation point of all, and that is, you're basically a stone throws away. I mean, you're probably a 15, 20-minute drive from the studios of ESPN. And I don't know how big that would be, but I'm thinking
it's big.
I'm thinking it's big.
I mean, it's not big currently. It's not. It doesn't make a difference for them right now.
Not
but
now.
I think it could with the right circumstances. And if you're Brett Yormark in the Big 12,
you got that.
There is obvious interest to get on board with
That's
that.
what I'm thinking.
869-1240 is the IHOP hotline. We're rolling through this Friday. We'll get you ready for the rest of the sports weekend. Any other odds and ends to get to? DeAndre Hopkins to the Texans, perhaps. An interesting wrinkle there. We'll talk about it all as we make our way through the final minutes of our Friday Sports Daily. Welcome back, everybody. Sports Daily. Chad informed me that he does have some coffee cards, some free coffee cards over to HDO. Let's give away a couple right now to we'll just do first caller to the IHOP hotline, 869-1240. You can try the hot coffee. You can try one of the new iced coffee offerings at HTO East only the East to get the coffee, which is at 127th and 21st. So Jad will get us a winner to that. Let me know what you think about it. Always room for suggestions and thoughts on the business. Paul, DeAndre Hopkins. We talked yesterday about all the teams. I don't remember if we mentioned Houston. I think we did.
Did
as a
we?
Potential reunion spot.
No, I don't
It
remember.
just didn't make a lot of sense from the perspective of they're not going to be a contender, and they have an unknown at quarterback now in C.J. Stroud. But Hopkins has family there and apparently would have some interest in going back. I think if the Texans are in a situation where they can afford a shorter contract, giving C.J. Stroud a weapon like Hopkins makes sense, obviously. Same reason Bryce Young would make some sense if he were to go to Carolina. Like putting an experienced and sometimes bail them out type of receiver like DeAndre Hopkins, who absolutely can go get it as good as anybody in the league as far as bailing out a young quarterback. Yeah, I could be on board with that. I mean, I think that makes some sense. And if DeAndre Hopkins has an emotional reason to have any desire to be there, I think it's worth exploring. The other team that has sort of come up, and we thought this team might be interested, is the Patriots. And that, from a competitive standpoint, does make some sense.
Well, it does, but we're almost at the point now where I'm going to quit paying attention until he signs. You know when the news will happen?
Yeah, he's got to go be a free agent.
I know. But I mean, we've
it's
had him
take
linked.
Time.
We've had him linked with a half a dozen teams in this process, and one by one, they're falling out. They're not going to be that place. But I'm trying to remember, when was the last time we talked about a player who was destined to end up in so many places and never ends up in any of them? So I don't know. I'm kind of thinking that maybe you and I we just kind of sit back and all right,
for sure.
We'll make.
He's got to take his free agency tour.
He's got to figure it out.
He's got to be able to do that.
I think you're right.
Then we just sort of see it.
That's right.
That's okay. Like that's all right.
And it'll probably be. I won't be so shocked or surprised if it's a team we haven't even mentioned yet. Would you be surprised? No, I wouldn't be surprised. So we'll see what happens. And I think I'm buying even more what you were talking about yesterday. His desire to make the money, not the legacy, is going to end up being one of the deciding factors in this. I think and boy, I'm naive when I was naive to think that, he's going to look at where can he go win. I think I was naive. It's whenever somebody says it's not about the money, it's always
about the money.
Money. So, I'm naive in that, but we'll just go from there. But this story will be a story once he decides. And I think this thing's got legs. This thing does have legs. I think it's going to be a while.
It'll be a fascinating one to watch. He's never been a free agent. And the reason I think that it's okay that it's about the money is because he's old, right? Like it's not like he's
going to make what he can. You can't blame him,
I don't know
can you? Can't blame him.
No, never. I mean, I'm fine with it either way. If guys want to do it one way or the other, go for it. 869-1240 is the number to call as we wrap it up here pretty much on this Friday, Paul. We got game 2 coming Sunday in the NBA Finals. We get the long break here. The early line is 8.5 to 9 points, which is where game 1's line is. Let's just, as we look at it, again, I'm still not comfortable with that number. I don't like that number at all. I think I probably would take the points again. I would have lost. I didn't actually make that bet last night because I'm not confident in my NBA betting skills. But, the Nuggets were in control, and it still got down to 11 points in the end, and I have to imagine the Heat will play better in game 2. Is that enough to get a win? I'll say no. But I think they can finish within the number on Sunday.
Yeah, I'm not as convinced as you. I might be after game 2, but I think no doubt that Denver wins game 2, and you go back to the Heat, and then you go play at sea level. Then you go back to a home arena, and then we'll see what happens if this team pops to life. Will this team pop to life on Sunday night? Well, maybe it sure should. I mean, You've had some time to adjust to the altitude in Denver. We'll see what happens. But this series is going to be won or lost, I think, in game 3 and 4 when this thing goes back to Miami. That's where, because let's face it, I don't think at this point you or I or even Jad Chambers will be shocked if Denver wins.
Let's put it on the line this way.
All right.
Let's put it on the line this way.
All right, please.
If Miami loses game 2, do they have any chance to win the series?
I do, because if they lose game 3, then I'll say no. But if they lose game 2, I'm still in the camp. Send it back to Miami, and let's see if it can go back to Denver 2-2. Then I think at that point anything could happen. But no,
I think one more cut of audio. Jad, I think we have time to get this in, and this is interesting. Let's see if we can get that Barkley audio in here to give us some perspective on Miami's role in this.
You talk about underappreciated superstars. You talk about underappreciated teams, this Denver Nuggets. Nobody has believed in them all season, and they're here. And listen, if the Miami Heat are able to win this championship, it will be, in my opinion, the greatest run ever.
Yep.
For an underdog.
Yep.
For an underdog.
He's right.
True that.
I mean, we don't see 8 seeds. He's right. They're underdogs. Don't overlook how big an underdog they are in this series.
Right.
We'll see. Game 2 on Sunday. We'll come back. We'll wrap it up on this Friday edition of Sports Daily right after this. right, everybody. That'll do it for us here on a Friday edition of the program. Thanks to Paul for being in this week. Paul will jump in again next week. Tommy will be back. Jad will be here. Congratulations to all our giveaway winners. That will continue into next week as well. We'll come back. We'll look at game 2 of those NBA finals, which should be fantastic. And Paul, enjoy the weekend.
You too. Hey, drive safe. Have a great trip next week, my friend.
Will do. We'll be back with you. I'll be chiming in, I'm sure.
Oh, I know you
observing things, sending messages. All right, that'll do it for us. Thanks for watching on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Thanks for listening here on KFH. I'm Jacob Albracht for Paul Savage and Jad Chambers. See you Monday.
Sports, later news, and great comedy with Bob and Tom Mornings, 97.5 and 1240 KFH. Wichita, always live on the free Odyssey app.
Watch all this brouhaha.
Brouhaha. The #1 sports talk station in Wichita.
Do you want me to do it, Jad, since I'm not here on Monday?